everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're a first-time viewer, I'm happy you found me. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, and click the notifications for new content. Again, welcome, and let's get into the story. The Tomb of the Unknown Slave is a dedication that represents the nameless African slave who met an untimely death in the New Orleans neighborhood of Treme. The monument is located at the oldest African American Catholic church in the United States, the St. Augustine Catholic Church, founded in 1841 by a distinct group of free people of color, which meant they were born free and of mixed race, usually of African, European, and Native American descent, which was not uncommon in New Orleans. The free people who operated this church reserved pews for the local slaves to be able to have a place of worship. Two parishioners of this church were famous civil rights activists, Homer Plessy and A.P. Terode. Terode was an African-American attorney who headed the legal team for the New Orleans chapter of the NAACP during the Civil Rights Movement, and with the help from Thurgood Marshall, he filed the lawsuit that ended Jim Crow segregation in New Orleans. Homer Plessy was an American activist and free man of color of Creole descent. He was best known as the plaintiff in the United States Supreme Court decision Plessy v. Ferguson. In 1896, he challenged one of Louisiana's racial segregation laws, the Separate but Equal Law, as unconstitutional and attempted to force the U.S. Supreme Court to rule on that issue in his favor. But the court ruled against him, and the resulting separate but equal legal doctrine determined that state-mandated segregation did not violate the 14th Amendment, as long as the facilities provided for both black and white people were quote-unquote equal. This case would last until the mid-20th century, when another landmark case, Brown v. Board of Education, set new precedents concerning segregation in 1954, which ruled that U.S. state laws establishing racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. Because of this case, the court also partially overruled its decision in the Plessy case, declaring that separate but equal was unconstitutional for public schools. In the Treme neighborhood in New Orleans, at the St. Augustine Catholic Church, resting next to one of the walls outside, is a large, rusting set of thick chains that was constructed into an iron cross and displays the sets of hand and leg shackles that hang from the structure, which were once used to restrain and bind enslaved people. Although no one is actually buried beneath the cross, it is a symbol that represents and honors the unknown enslaved people who perished under American slavery and were buried nameless and unknown. The cross was installed in 2004 and serves as a monument and reminder that our country once thrived at the expense of human lives. During the Atlantic slave trade, the life of a slave was not considered a valuable life, only valuable property. Pre-Civil War slavery was about economic prosperity that depended on the mercantile system in the colonies. Financial gain and wealth for the slave owner was what it was all about, making them rich, through the harsh working conditions of slave labor that would produce the world's major textiles like tobacco, sugar, and cotton, commodities that were in high demand for both the New World and Europe. By 1840, the South grew 60% of the world's cotton, and slavery was in high demand. The demand for enslaved people in the colonies expanded the African slave trade. During the early years of colonial rule, Central Africa lost as much as 1/3 of its population. During these harsh times, many of the slaves suffered violent and unnecessary deaths, and were often buried without their loved ones even knowing they died, denying their family the ability to mourn them properly, and sadly, in extremely large numbers. These were real people, through no choice of their own, bought and shipped to the Americas for the purpose of indentured servitude. Whatever real purpose they were born for in life was ripped away from them when they were sold on the slave market and brought to a foreign land. There are still places in the city where the remains of unknown slaves have been unearthed over the years, which eventually inspired the building of the monument. A great deal of the remains of unknown slaves were uncovered during modern times during construction efforts and land developments. There is a bronze plaque attached to the wall of the church that explains the monument was primarily inspired by the number of unmarked graves that have been unearthed in the city over the years. The shrine honors all slaves buried throughout the United States, but especially the slaves of Treme, who worked and died there. Some of the unknown slaves were killed, accused of treachery, and others died of disease, like yellow fever and other illnesses, resulting in rushed burials into the unmarked graves. The monument serves as a reminder of an oppressed people from our past, about how they were treated and died, and became discarded as nameless faces, as if they never existed. Even though there are still many slaves in unmarked graves, we now know that they did exist, that they had a name and a family who loved them, and most important, to honor them and to never forget. Today, our country prides itself on freedom, the freedom to exist, and to coexist with each demographic peacefully, to live as you wish without prejudice, to move away from past atrocities and abandon intolerance, to let go of animosity, and to learn from the mistakes of our predecessors, including our own, to move and continue forward, and to make a better world. Behind that church is the grave of the unknown slave. Never knew about that until this trip. Found out about it right before, so found out it was pretty near our room, and we are at the St. Augustine Church, Tomb of the Unknown Slave. Now, this cross is actually made from old chains from some of the, I guess, ships that they used to use to transport slaves over to this country. And if you look real close, those are real shackles. Those are real shackles they used on slaves. So, you know, you got burials of the unknown soldier and stuff like that. Well, this is in New Orleans, the tomb of the unknown slave. And I'll come over here and read this to you. The Tomb of the Unknown Slave. On this October 30th, 2004, we, the faith community of St. Augustine Catholic Church, dedicate this shrine consisting of grave crosses, chains, and shackles to the memory of the nameless, faceless, turfless Africans who met an untimely death in Orleans-Treme. The Tomb of the Unknown Slave is commemorated here in this garden plot of St. Augustine Church, the only parish in the United States whose free people of color brought two outer rows of pews exclusively for slaves to use for worship. This St. Augustine-Treme shrine honors all slaves buried throughout the United States, and those slaves in particular who lie beneath the ground of Treme in unmarked, unknown graves. There is no doubt that the campus of St. Augustine Church sits astride the blood, sweat, tears, and some of the mortal remains of unknown slaves from Africa and local American Indian slaves who either met with fatal treachery and were therefore buried quickly and secretly, or were buried hastily and at random because of yellow fever and other plagues. Even now, some Treme locals have childhood memories of salvage restoration workers unearthing various human bones, sometimes in concentrated areas such as wells. In other words, the tomb of the unknown slave is a constant reminder that we are walking on holy ground. Thus, we cannot consecrate this tomb because it is already consecrated by many slaves in glorious death, bereft of any acknowledgement, dignity, or respect, but ultimately glorious by their blood, sweat, tears, faith, prayers, and deep worship of our Creator. For new content and breaking news stories, please be sure to click the notifications to follow along and be notified when updates are available. Don't forget to like, comment, and please feel free to share. You can also join my Facebook group for True Crime and History Time and follow me on TikTok and Instagram. My usernames for those platforms are @JeriScarborough Official. And as always, thank you for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel.